بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون. لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون. وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون. وسواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون. قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردن الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون. يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون. ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون. وإن كل لما جميع لدينا مهضرون. وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها هبا فمنه يأكلون. وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون. سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها مؤردين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في السور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. سورة الفاتحة.
The Maghrib Nawaz will be held over there.
There you go. You trying to sneak attack me? I got you. No. You're here. If you're here, I'll do it. Please. Can't argue with you yourself.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله هيا على الصلاة هيا على الصلاة هيا على الفلاح هيا على الفلاح هيا على خير العمل هيا على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. هيا على الصلاة حي على الصلاة. هيا على الفلاح هيا على الفلاح. هيا على خير العمل. هيا على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. استغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربنا. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك الرحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بحول الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد
لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Astaghfirullah allazi la ilaha illa huwal hayyul qayyum. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Jul jalali wal ikrami wa atubu ilaik. Allahumma inni as'aluka mujibati rahmatik wa zaima maghfiratik wa najata minan nar wa min kulli baliyah والفوز بالجنة ورضوانا في دار السلام وجوار نبيك محمد عليه وآله السلام اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمنك لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير الأعمال حي على خير الأعمال قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله استغفر الله استغفر الله استغفر الله ربي من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفر إنه كان توابا الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر بحول الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد كذلك الله ربنا الله أكبر اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم ادخلنا في كل خير أدخلت فيه محمد وآل محمد وأخرجنا من كل سوء أخرجت منه محمد وآل محمد وصل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر بسم الله وبالله الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بحول الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر بحول الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده يا ولي العافية نسألك اللهم العافية عافية الدين والدنيا والآخرة اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر اللهم صل على محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه اللهم إنه ليس لي علم بموضع رزقي وإنما أطلبه بخطرات تخطر على قلبي فأجوب في طلبه البلدان فأنا فيما أنا طالب كالحيران لا أدري في سحر هو أم في جبل أم في أرض أم في سماع أم في بر أم في بحر وعلى يدي من ومن قبل من وقد علمت أن علمه عندك وأسبابه بيدك وأنت الذي تقسمه بلطفك وتسببه برحمتك. اللهم فصل على محمد وآله واجعل يا ربي رزقك لي واسعا ومطلبه سهلا ومعخذه قريبا ولا تعنني بطلب ما لم تقدر لي فيه رزقا فإنك غني عن عذاب وأنا فقير إلى رحمتك. فصل على محمد وآله وجد على عبدك بفضلك إنك ذو فضل عظيم.
He hurt me mid-prayer. Ow!
Beating him up.
बर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलवात। बिछड़े सफ़र में ऐसे मुस्लिम के पिसर दोनों, बिछड़े सफ़र में ऐसे मुस्लिम के पिसर दोनों, थे लख्ते जिगर दोनों, थे लख्ते जिगर दोनों, थे नूरे नज़र दोनों, बिछड़े सफ़र में ऐसे मुस्लिम के पिसर दोनों। जब कत्ल हुए मुस्लिम कूफे की फ़िज़ाओं में, खूने अबू तालिब की خوشبو تھی ہواؤں میں، پیچھے تھے اجل ان کے، پیچھے تھے اجل ان کے، جاتے تھے جدھر دونوں، بچھڑے سفر میں ایسے مسلم کے پسر دونوں، سائے سے بھی ڈرتے تھے، سورج سے بھی چھپتے تھے، ظالم تھا تعاقب میں، اس واسطے سہمے تھے، جب ڈھونڈنے پھرتے تھے، جب ڈھونڈنے پھرتے تھے، اپنا کوئی گھر دونوں، بچھڑے سفر میں ایسے مسلم کے پسر دونوں، غربت تھی یتیمی تھی، بچے تھے مسافر تھے، خلاق دو عالم کی درگاہ میں حاضر تھے، تھی ذات خدا سر پہ، تھی ذات خدا سر پہ، بے گھر تھے مگر دونوں، بچھڑے سفر میں ایسے مسلم کے پسر دونوں، جاتے تو کہاں جاتے، واقف نہ تھے رستوں سے، دریا کی طرح آنسو بہتے رہے اشکوں سے، قدرت کے بھروسے پہ، قدرت کے بھروسے پہ، کرتے تھے سفر دونوں، بچھڑے سفر میں سے مسلم کے پسر دونوں، دریا سے انہیں لا کر ظالم نے انہیں مارا، معصوموں کی گردن تھی اور خون کا فوارہ، ریحان جدا پھر بھی، ریحان جدا پھر بھی، آئے نہ نظر دونوں، بچھڑے سفر میں ایسے مسلم کے پسر دونوں، صلوات۔
Let us recite a loud salawat and call upon Sheikh Bilal. Par Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
رحم الله من يقرأ سورة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الحكيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أن تقول نفس يا حسرة على ما فرطت في جنب الله وإن كنت لمن الساخرين. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. Your second salawat for love of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. And your loudest salawat is condolences to the master of our time, Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Hasra in the Arabic language refers to regret. In its literal translation, it's at times translated as the removal of something that is like a cloth off of a body. But in its essence, in its use, many times it's referred to as to possess hasra is to possess a regret that there was something that could have been accomplished that wasn't. In life, most of us have no desire to have regrets. Rather, we hope to fulfill and accomplish many of the tasks that we choose to in life. But sometimes we have a problem with priority. And understanding that there are certain things, what are those priorities in life that we need to fulfill to ensure that we have a successful life and there is no hasrat, there's no regret. One of the names of the Day of Judgment is Yawmul Hasra, the Day of Regret. Because the greatest of regrets that we possess are those that are associated with the finality of our purpose. Hence Allah in this verse in Surah Zumar, verse number 56, makes the statement, أَن تَقُولَ نَفْسٌ, that lest the soul should say that on the Day of Judgment there will be those souls that will complain and say, Ya hasrata ala ma farrattu fi janbillah. Woe to me for what I fell short of my duty to Allah. Wa in kuntu lamina sakhirin. And surely I was one of those who laughed and scorned. Allah, when He describes the Day of Judgment as a day of regret and a day of hasra, He says that on that day will be the greatest of hasra, that will be the day of the greatest of regrets, and hence it's called Yawmul Hasra, the day of regrets. That there will be those who will complain and say that I fell short of my duty to Allah. And certainly in my life I was someone who laughed and scorned at the commands of Allah, that I took them lightly and I thought that they were things to be played with. These regrets that we possess in our life, Allah is demonstrating and giving us a warning that you who hate regrets in your life, the biggest of regrets is taking lightly the commands of Allah. A significant implementation of this is when we look at our children and we look at our coming generations. And more often, we try to take the lessons we've learned in our life and teach them to our children so that they have no regrets in their life. We want our next generation to do better and better from what we've accomplished. But this ayah of the Quran is giving a warning that the biggest of regrets that your children, that you can have, is that you did not fulfill your duty to Allah on the Day of Judgment. That there was something in this life that needed to be accomplished that wasn't done. And that at that point in time, you will complain to Allah and say, woe is me, that I am the one who neglected the duties to Allah. What's interesting in this verse is the translation when it says, Ala ma farrattu fi janbillah, for what I fell short of my duty to Allah. Janbillah literally translates to the side of Allah. But here the translator has taken the liberty of converting janbillah to mean duty to Allah. This points to one of the biggest regrets that exist, and if we were to break down these regrets, we'll mention three categories, but the first of these we take from this ayah itself, where it says that I am the one who fell short fi janbillah. Janbillah in English we could say the side of Allah, and yet the side of Allah in the context of the verse and its discussion would not make any sense to us. So hence the translator comes to the point and he says, هذا جنب الله هو بمعنى ما أحكم الله علينا. What Allah commanded us to perform, I fell short of. However, when we look at the Mufassirin and we look at the translation, that Janb Allah is one of the titles of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. We see narrations from our 6th Imam, our 7th Imam, and the other A'immah that explain that in this verse when it says Janb Allah, Nahnu Janb Allah, we are the side of Allah. That the reality of the verse in one of the explanations of the tafsir of this verse is that on that day of regret, one of the greatest regrets that people will possess is that they fell short of their duty to Ahlul Bayt. And that by not completing their duty to the Ahlul Bayt, they found themselves to be someone who was at a loss on the Day of Judgment. Which is why one of the biggest regrets that a person can possess in their life is that knowing of and learning about and knowing about the concept of wilayah and not fulfilling our duty to the concept of wilayah. That when we know that Ahlul Bayt exist and they are an authority over us, to submit ourselves to them and to follow their commands is one of the most essential items that exists for us. This idea of following their commands and submitting ourselves to the authority of the Ahlul Bayt fits into a number of different categories. One of these categories of not following the authority of Ahlul Bayt is when we make shortcuts in fiqh. That the purpose of the Ahlul Bayt being present was to ensure that whatever the command of Allah is has been made clear to us, that we perform an action exactly as Allah wants us to. When we refuse to follow that instruction, when we refuse to follow the path of making sure that every action is detailed as Allah wants it, then we have fallen short in our duty to Ahlul Bayt, that they took the time and they exerted the effort to teach us and refused to follow that process. In the ghaybat of the Imam, that responsibility goes to the fuqaha, to the jurisprudence, to the maraja, and not by our choice, but rather the A'immah themselves would explain to us to turn back to the fuqaha, turn back to the jurisprudence, that turn back to those who are knowledgeable in the sayings of Ahlul Bayt to be able to guide us and to follow us. So one of the obligations that we have is that when it comes to the ahkam of Allah, we follow them exactly. Now sometimes there's a question. Why does it have to be so precise? Why do we have to be so specific? If I've done it one way, isn't it sufficient? Why do I have to be in such detail? To the extent where even the conversation comes on the concept of moon sighting. When it comes to sighting the moon, why can't we all be together? Why must we be specific and particular? Well, there are two reasons to this. One, because Allah Himself is specific and particular. Look at the structure of a human being. Allah has made it a human being with extreme precision of the combination of these 23 chromosomes. You can't even physically see this item. But if one of them is off, and you can't even see where it is off, the human being is incomplete. Or the human being has a problem in his development. Meaning Allah is precise and He likes precision to come from His creation. Therefore, one who follows His commands needs to be precise. The other aspect that we take a look at, and we see that why it's important that even in a concept like moon sighting, to be specific to the extent of following the ahkam, is that the concept of wilayah and the authority of the Imam will always be specific. And you will find that if an Imam commands you to an action, your job is to fulfill that action exactly and precisely as the Imam prescribes. Now it may happen that two people standing together, believing in the same Imam, have different responsibilities to fulfill and different obligations to fulfill. When I say that, why do I have to do this differently? Why can't I do it the way he does it? Here I am questioning the authority of the Imam. That if there's a prescription that's given to me to the best of my ability to come to a conclusion of what the Imam has instructed me to do, I don't care what someone next to me is doing. I care what the Imam has commanded me to do. Yet what happens when we see a differentiation in our community, when we see something that disagrees with the commonality of people coming together, we start to question the hukum. We start to question the authority. And as a consequence, that returns back to the authority that we are commanded to follow whatever the closest we can get to the law of the Imam. That's our obligation to follow. So this idea of looking at ahkam and the responsibilities that we have to the law, when we decide to skirt the law, when we decide to change the law, when we decide to take the fiqh easy, we take our responsibility to Ahlul Bayt easily. We take it lightly. That they gave it to us, what if I change it a little bit? I'll make it a little bit easier for myself. The second of these points where we see the explanation of Janbillah and our responsibility to Janbillah, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali, is to be familiar with the affairs and their teachings. That not just in the concept of fiqh, but the akhlaq, the tarbiyah, the attributes of dealing with difficulties, the attributes of dealing with difficult people, the process of making peace in society, the process of being leaders in society. The Ahlul Bayt exerted their lives not just to give us rule books, otherwise they would have just written a book and handed it to us. They went through the process of establishing a particular akhlaq, a tarbiyah, a social system of importance and value that reflects the iman in the heart in action in person. It's very complicated to say that I keep faith in Ahlul Bayt, but my character looks nothing like one of the followers of Ahlul Bayt. And very famously in the hadith of Mufaddal, the tradition of Mufaddal, Mufaddal was a companion of our sixth Imam, and he was someone who was famous for his knowledge in debating. And Mufaddal, famously sitting in the Masjid al-Nabawi, sees an atheist come and criticize Rasulullah and say that this man, he did a great thing by unifying the Arabs and giving them a nation. But this concept of worshipping one single deity was a waste of his time. Mufaddal loses his temper and yells at this man. Says, how dare you? Sitting in the Prophet's mosque, you talk in such a way. And this man was a very intelligent man who wanted to attack the faith of Islam. So he says, whoa, whoa, whoa. Aren't you one of the Shias of Ja'far as-Sadiq? He says, I am. He says, then why don't you talk to me like a Shia of Ja'far as-Sadiq? Why are you attacking me and insulting me? This was someone who was alive in the time of the Imam, and his criticism was very apparent. But we have to look at our character in this way, that we who are the Shia of Ahlul Bayt, if we don't embody the character of Ahlul Bayt in our society today, and tomorrow this environment learns about who the Ahlul Bayt are, they would be fair to point a finger at each one of us and say, none of you represented the values of Ahlul Bayt. These are the people you love. We never saw their character in you. You are no different than us. Yet these were those who never followed the character of society. They were absolute in their justice and kindness and improving society for a whole. When our character is lacking, even in a simple conflict, when you go to a store, how you speak to a person, how you disagree with a person, how you resolve a conflict with someone. Even in those elements, for our women it's very straightforward, that they look at them by the hijab and they can recognize that this is a Muslim. But for us, our names are Abbas, Muhammad, Ali. For us, it's also an important matter that we make sure that our character in society reflects the values that are taught by Ahlul Bayt. Which is why the Imam would say, تَكُونُوا زَيْنًا لَنَا وَلَا تَكُونُوا شَيْنًا عَلَيْنَا. Be a source of adornment for us. Be a beautification for us. Zinat for us. Don't be a shayna upon us. Don't be a criticism upon us. Don't be a dhabba upon us, as they say in Urdu. That, oh, for you, you are a cause of insult and disrespect for me. This is the teaching of the Ahlul Bayt. When we have the hasra on the Day of Judgment, part of it will be from the aspect of fiqh, part will be from akhlaq. That we didn't represent the values of these people, that we would be embarrassed to stand in front of them on that day. The third of these elements, which is the most important even to our next generation, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Understanding what it means to love the Ahlul Bayt. When it comes to the aspect of loving the Ahlul Bayt, this is a family affair. Let me explain what I mean by that. There are certain things you don't tell your child in public. You take them home and you explain to them. Don't tell people what day we do laundry in the house. Don't discuss finances outside of the house. Don't tell people we're poor. Don't tell people we have money. These are matters of the house that we take care of in the house. And it's a discussion that we say that to train our child correctly, there are certain things that don't belong in the public sphere. This is a debate in society now, that what is the teacher's responsibility and what is the parent's responsibility? There are certain important elements of a personality and character that have to be established in the house and taught in the house. One of those aspects is the love of Ahlul Bayt and the hate for the enemies of Ahlul Bayt. This tawalla and tabarra, this love the friends of Allah and hate the enemies of Allah. It's become an aspect that we believe and we say that no, we have to do this out in the streets. That's not what it was intended to do, because it conflicts with the second responsibility that we have of having the proper character of the Shia of Ahlul Bayt. Proper character of Shia of Ahlul Bayt are those people who are accessible and aid and improve society.
But if we, by talking about and criticizing the enemies of Ahlul Bayt in public, differentiate in society and remove the ability to work together, we've done a disservice to the character and akhlaq of Ahlul Bayt. You can take a look and see that how the Aimma used to deal with even some of their worst enemies. That the descendant of the second Khalifa in the dawr of the seventh Imam, who would criticize the Imam publicly, the Imam turns to his companions after this man, the descendant of the second Khalifa, comes to Imam al-Kadhim in Masjid al-Nabawi and insults him in front of everybody. And when he goes to leave, the companions set up that let's finish this one. Imam says, wait. He says, I'll deal with him directly. Then a short while later he says, do you want to see how I deal with him? I said, yes, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, we want to be there to support you. And this is where we see the Imam reference, Ya Kadhimin al-Ghayth, the one who swallows their anger. And they say at this point in time we understood that the Imam will not deal with him with harshness. Rather the Imam goes to see him and offers him an amount of wealth to satisfy him. And the next day, this same man comes into Masjid Nabawi and says, Wallahu ya'lamu haythu yaj'ala risalata. Allah knows best where to put His authority and His messengership. This instruction of Imam al-Kadhim, dealing with one of the worst enemies. We have other narrations of our fourth Imam, who when he deals with Marwan ibn Hakam, who was responsible for the excising of Imam Hussein from the city of Medina, when he becomes outcast from the government and the people of Medina want to rise up against him and attack him, they said, let Imam Zayn al-Abidin be the first to take his revenge against him. When they wait for Imam Zayn al-Abidin, Imam Zayn al-Abidin comes and says simply to Marwan, Marwan, that one who said that may cut off the head of Hussein before he leaves here, you will never get his bay'ah. Imam Zayn al-Abidin says to him that if you find yourself in need, we are here to assist you. Our fourth Imam makes this statement. The significance of these processes in recognizing this is to say that loving the Ahlul Bayt and knowing to love the Ahlul Bayt and to hate their enemies was not a public affair that needed to be announced in society, because that would no longer open the door for hidayah to humanity. Rather, it was something that needed to be taught in the house, that this is an affair of our house, this is what we keep in our heart, this is what needs to be reflected in your actions, this is what needs to be known by your personality. That there are certain names and personalities, when you hear of them, they should create distaste in your heart, not indifference, because of their impact upon those that you love. And showing that love in your children becomes an important element to establish. But this is something that needs to be done in the house. And if it's not done in the house, and it's not done correctly, and you rely on this pulpit to do it, this pulpit can't do it. This pulpit isn't designed to do the household affairs, because it's designed to welcome everybody. It's designed to have every level of individual present in the same audience and benefit collectively. It's one of the most difficult things about this pulpit is that when you sit here, the conversation has to be appropriate for the child, the adult, the grandfather, the scholar, and the person who's not a scholar, all simultaneously. Now, to expect that this will take the responsibility to educate your children about the love that they need to have specifically about Ahlul Bayt and the hatred they need to have for the enemies of Ahlul Bayt, it's mahal, it's impossible. It's not physically capable, because each individual has to be addressed uniquely. And that's where the culture of the house is important, that in our house we raise our children to the status of understanding why there were those who were the enemies of Ahlul Bayt and we dislike them, and why there were those that friends of the Ahlul Bayt and we name our children after them. This element is something that causes hasra on the day of judgment, because the lineage becomes diluted in the process of what has been given as an investment. These elements are, when we talk about janbillah and association with Ahlul Bayt, there are three main categories. That the fiqh and ahkam that we follow, that the Ahlul Bayt sacrificed their life to teach us, the character and akhlaq that they embodied entirely in their lives, and that the love for them and the hatred for their enemies is something that is reflected in my personality, else I would be someone who has hasra on the day of judgment. The greatest of regrets. Regretting not taking a career decision, not buying a particular house, not buying a particular object, not making an investment, is sometimes a regret that we hold for years. 20 years ago, if I would have bought this house, what I would have had today. If I would have invested in Apple 20 years ago, what I would have had today. If Amazon, I had bought that stock, you would see what I could do now. These are small regrets. But the essence of regret is when my life is completed, did I accomplish what Allah wanted me to accomplish with this life? The extent of the regret, Allah goes to the description of providing it in the Quran as well. When we take a look, for example, in Surah Al-Furqan, the 25th chapter of the Holy Quran, Allah describes the extreme extent of the regret, where He says, وَيَوْمَ يَعَضُّ ظَالِمُ عَلَى يَدَيْهِ وَيَقُولُ يَا لَيْتَنِي اتَّخَذْتُ مَعَ رَسُولِ السَّبِيلَ. That there will be those on this day of Hasra who will bite, the unjust one will bite his hand, saying, oh, I wish I would have taken the sabil, the path with the Messenger of Allah. Ya waylata laytani lam attakhidh fulanan khalila. Oh, woe is me. Waylata. Again, Allah describes this and says this is extreme in regret. Oh, I regret so much that I would not have taken such one as a friend. The significance of this statement of Allah saying that I took so-and-so as a friend who took me away from the companionship of the Prophet is to indicate that the conversation here is not about the disbeliever. It's not about the one who never came to Islam. Rather, this is about the regret that a person possesses who came to Islam, who knew what the right path was and didn't execute his responsibility correctly. Which is why, لَقَدْ أَضَلَّنِي عَنِ الذِّكْرِ بَعْدَ إِذْ جَاءَنِي وَكَانَ الشَّيْطَانُ لِلْإِنسَانِ خُذُولًا. This verse tells us exactly who's being discussed here. That certainly he led me astray from the reminder after it had come to me. لَقَدْ أَضَلَّنِي عَنِ الذِّكْرِ بَعْدَ إِذْ جَاءَنِي. That I was on the path of guidance. I had it in my possession. And he took me away from this path of guidance. And certainly shaitan is a bad enemy or a bad friend for, and shaitan fails to aid man and fails to support man. وَقَالَ الرَّسُولِ يَا رَبِّي أَنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَحْجُورًا. And then this verse talks about one of the important issues that we need to pay attention to. But first we take a look and we see that this entire instruction of the person who has regret on the Day of Judgment is honestly and literally about the mu'min. Because he says, I had the right path, I knew what I had to do, and I became distracted. I didn't fulfill my obligations. I didn't do the right things that I was supposed to do. And that this will be the person who is regretful on the Day of Judgment. What will be the regrets that we possess? From the one aspect we've talked about janbillah, we've talked about the responsibility to Ahlul Bayt. From the other aspect, the person who will have severe regret on this day is the one that's discussed in the next verse. قَالَ رَسُولِ يَا رَبِّي إِنَّ قَوْمِي أَتَّخَذَ هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَحْجُورًا. That in this moment, as that person is complaining that I had guidance and I lost it, Rasulullah will stand up and complain, oh Allah, this nation of mine took the Quran as a plaything. They took it lightly. They did not take it seriously what I had given them. That they were forsaking the Quran. The other element of importance of regret that we possess, and we should not want our children to possess, is the depth of our relationship with the Quran. That this will be something we will regret. That Rasulullah will complain about us that we took this relationship lightly. We didn't value this important connection that we needed to have. This Quran for us, in the ghaibat of the Imam, is one of the important elements that we need to ponder over and pore over. The same way that we wish that if the Imam was here, we would want to look at him all the time. We would want to speak to him all the time. We would want his company and his guidance in every affair. So is the Quran for us in this time. And the beauty of it is, there was a time where we were not intelligent enough to build this deep connection with the Quran. We didn't possess those resources to be more closer and familiar with the Quran. What excuse do we have today? We who don't have an excuse, we will be the ones who will be the ones biting at our hands on the Day of Judgment. That there was no excuse. The Quran was available in print to us. We had it. It was available in every language that we needed. It was available in audio. It was available in video. It was available in podcast. Everything I could have had and needed to build this deeper connection with the Quran, I didn't. There was a time we had the excuse that Arabic is not our language and there's no way for us to learn it. Now there is every way to learn it. There's every way to attach to it. And what happens when we want to build with our children a connection with the Quran? Yeah, we want to build a connection with the Quran, but what do? Finish the Quran, we make it a race. And at the age of 6 or 7, the child has finished the Quran and then close it and put it to the side, you're done with it now. There's no development in that connection, there's no depth in that. That's where a point of regret comes in this life. And Allah gives the time to elaborate specifically how severe that regret will be. You'll bite at your hands, crying and complaining that I had this hidayah and I lost it. I had this possession near me and I didn't take advantage of it. Now when it comes to our children, to build these relationships, there are a few important points to pay attention, and even in the lesson of the children of Muslim ibn Aqil, we see these examples manifested. First and foremost, when we talk about the children of Hazrat Muslim ibn Aqil, these are the grandchildren of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. More often we focus on the relationship of being the first cousin between Muslim ibn Aqil and Imam Hussein. But Muslim ibn Aqil, as the first cousin of Imam Hussein, is married to Bibi Ruqayya. Bibi Ruqayya is the daughter of Imam Ali. The oppression that these children face, the upright nature that they possess, is a reflection of the teachings of the house of Ahlul Bayt. When we look at them and we mourn over them, these are the grandchildren of Amir al-Mu'minin. It's noted to say that there are at least 4 sons of Hazrat Muslim ibn Aqil. 2 of them who were martyred in Karbala, and 2 who were martyred and are buried in Musayyib. The discussion presents itself first and foremost of these 4 children. The 2 who are martyred in Karbala amongst the shuhada are known as warriors. Abdullah ibn Muslim, in some narrations of the Tarikh of Karbala, is narrated to be the first from amongst the Banu Hashim who went out to fight. Many times we have this discussion that it's Ali al-Akbar. Other mu'arrikhin have noted that it was Abdullah ibn Muslim, and that both of these young men had similar ages of approximately 18 years of age. They describe and they say that Abdullah ibn Muslim, when he went out to fight, he killed over 99 of the enemies of Imam Hussein, until eventually an archer who was caught by Mukhtar says that I saw a young man who looked like the beauty of the moon standing in front of us, and none could stand in his combat. So I stood from a distance and I waited to him to be engaged in battle. Then I shot an arrow at him. My first arrow he saw coming and raised his hand to block, but it pierced his hand and stuck his hand to his forehead. That now the arrow was stuck his hand and his forehead on there. He looking at me, then he turned his attention to me, and as he tried to admonish me that who are you to shoot arrows as us? We are the family of Rasulullah. I raised my second arrow and I shot it to the heart of Abdullah ibn Muslim, and he fell from his horse. They describe in the court of Mukhtar that they said, what did you do then? He says, I went to go collect my arrows. I pulled my arrow from his chest of the young man. When I went to go remove the arrow from his forehead, I could not pull the arrow, so I began to shake it in his forehead and yank as hard as I could. They describe in the court of Mukhtar, the companions of Ahlul Bayt could take not the description and went to raise their swords upon this enemy of Allah. Mukhtar said, stop. He has killed the family of Rasulullah with arrows, then kill him in the same way. They encircled this man and they shot arrows at him until he was killed. His younger brother, Abdullah ibn Muslim's younger brother, who is known as Muhammad ibn Muslim, the first of Muhammad ibn Muslim, was a young man of 16 that they said that stood in front of Abu Abdullah in his defense when the companions had been spent. Until again an archer from a distance shot an arrow and the young man collapsed in front of his uncle and he became shaheed. These other 2 boys who are known as Muhammad and Ibrahim, there are a number of narrations about them. One of these narrations explains and says that they went to the city of Kufa with Hazrat Muslim. This is debatable, especially considering when it says that at the Shahadat of Muslim ibn Aqil, he had kept these 2 boys with a person by the name of Shurayh ibn Harith al-Qindi. Shurayh ibn Harith al-Qindi, who was a judge in the city of Kufa, was actually an enemy of the Ahlul Bayt and raised an army against Imam Hussein, and was the one to support this cause against Imam Hussein, and he was a judge that was appointed by the first and second Khalifa and deposed by Amir al-Mu'minin. To imagine that he would be the one who was deposed by Amir al-Mu'minin and then take the responsibility of the children of Muslim ibn Aqil is questionable. Though there are people who give this narration in history and say that Shurayh was the keeper of the sons of Muslim when he was then martyred in the city of Kufa. The more likely explanation is that these 2 boys were in the event of Karbala with their 2 brothers, their sister Hamida or Humayda, and their mother Ruqayya. The night after the killing of Imam Hussein, Imam Zainul Abidin describes, he says, our children were lost in the field of Karbala that night, the way a tasbih that is broken and the beads scatter across the earth. That the children, when they started to light the tents on fire, They ran in different directions to hide from those who were chasing them and running after them. The severity of the condition is described and said that there is one narration that I have read that says that Sayyidah Sakina says that as I ran from the fire and as I ran from the enemies, someone put a spear to my back and pushed me to the floor. In this condition I fell upon my face and I lost consciousness. Sometime later I found that it was my aunt Zainab who lifted me up. As a child of 3 in the lap of her aunt, the narration writes and says that the child requested and said, "Oh aunt, do you have any cloth for me to cover my head? They have taken from me even my hijab." And the reply from Sayyidah Zainab, and she says that my condition is the same as yours, O child, that we have nothing now left for us. In this condition of the scattering of Ahlul Bayt, these 2 boys were separated from the rest of the family and taken as prisoners by someone who wished to gain favor with Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. And hence they were taken and put into the prisons of Sham separate from the rest of the Sibaya. And they were put there for a period of a year. In the month of Zilhajj, when we commemorate their Shahada, this is not that Zilhajj that took place before the event of Karbala, like the Shahadat of Muslim ibn Aqil. This is that Zilhajj that was 1 year after the event of Karbala. For 1 year, these boys were kept in a prison. And the prisoner, who was known as Mashkur, the prison keeper, the warden known as Mashkur, was the one who was the warden over them, and he would describe and say, I would see these 2 boys busy fasting all day and praying at night. These boys are reported to be 9 and 7 at the time of their capture, or 9 and 7 at the time of their shahadat. The culture for them to know that in difficulty turn back to Allah is a culture that comes from the household. If we don't show our children that in your free time worship Allah and do ibadat of Him, and that when you have the capacity that it's time to do something unique and special in your relationship to Allah, if the culture in the house is not of fasting when we have the ability, if it's not of praying when we want to thank Allah, then a child who is separated from his parents doesn't possess this culture. Yet Mashkur writes and he says, I would see these 2 boys who were pious in their nature. I would see them fast during the day. You wonder, oh Mashkur, did they fast out of piety, or was it because the Mal'oon Ubaydullah would not give them more than 1 piece of bread in a day? Eventually Mashkur says, you seem to be from houses of nobility. Oh children, tell me, who are you? They replied and they said, are you a Muslim? This question is asked in the field of Karbala, and it's asked here. Why? Because these children raised as Muslims could not imagine such akhlaq and character from someone who would call himself a Muslim. Mashkur replies, I am a Muslim. They asked, do you love Rasulullah? He said, I love Rasulullah. And of his family, I care for their family. They said, we are the children of Rasulullah that you have imprisoned. Mashkur beats his face and weeps at the aspect that he is the one who has jailed them, according to some of the poets. He says, I shall set you free. He takes them one night and exits the city of Kufa and leaves them on a road and hopes that maybe a caravan will come that will take them and guide them to that path of returning home. For this act, Ubaydullah the next day kills this Mashkur, and he is killed for the fact of supporting these children. Ubaydullah put out a message to say that whoever finds these children is a great reward with Ubaydullah for them. However they bring them to him. In this they describe and say that these 2 children hid during the days and would travel at night, but their weakness did not permit them to go far, but rather they found a garden area by a river and they stopped in that area for the night. The next morning a maidservant, as she collected water, she says, in the water I saw the reflection of as if 2 pieces of the moon were sitting in a tree. I told my mistress of what I had seen, and she came to collect these children, knowing that they must be of nobility. She brought them to her house. But this woman who was showing kindness to these children, it was her husband Harith, who was from one of the soldiers of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, who was looking for these children. They describe and say the evilness of Harith with these children can be explained. That when Ubaydullah put out the command to find these children, Harith, in the interest of the reward, began to travel between the deserts and the mountains. And as he was traveling and pushing his horse to find these children, his horse died at some distance from his home. So he was forced to carry the saddle and return to his home. When he returns to his home, his wife does not want to disclose to him who is in the house. And Harith himself is frustrated. So he does not ask the question and he leaves the affair. Until in the middle of the night, these two sons of Muslim ibn Aqil awake, crying and hugging one another and saying, brother, I have seen my father in our dream, or I have seen our father in my dream, and he has informed me that soon we will return to him, that our time here is done, we will not return to our mother, but rather we will leave this world. The two children in this condition too take the time for the ibadat of Allah, but as they weep and as they are afraid, Harith hears the noise in this house, hears the noise of two children weeping. He goes and he finds these children, suspecting the truth. They describe and say that Harith began to beat the children until they would disclose their names. When they disclosed that they were the sons of Muslim that he was looking for, that his animal had died for, that he had struggled to return home from, he doubled his severity upon them and tied them to a post and said, tomorrow I will collect my reward for you. When the morning comes, he takes them to the side of the river. They say, O enemy of Allah, you are hoping for a reward. Take us to the market of slaves and sell us as slaves. We will not complain. Harith says, I shall do no such thing. They said, then take us alive to Ubaydullah. Let us plead our case with him. He says, I will do no such thing. I will take that wealth that is entitled to me for the difficulty you have caused me. They say, then give us the permission to recite 2 rakat of salat. Let us worship Allah one final time. One of the teachers says that they requested this 2 rakat salat, that they said, Oh Mal'oon, you kept us tied at the time of Fajr. We could not pray to Allah in that moment. Allow us now to pray what is wajib upon us before we leave this world. Upon completing their salat, Harith Mal'oon stands over the children, looks to one as he prepares to kill one, the other puts his head over his brother, and he says, I shall be the one to sacrifice myself for the brother. In this way the two compete in promoting and going after that shahada until Harith kills the two boys and throws them into the river. They describe and they say that a body did not move until the brother joined him. Harith took the heads. Such animosity he had that he presents them in front of Ubaydullah. They describe in the court, we saw the governor look at the heads of two children, stand up in frustration, sit down in frustration. Even the enemy of Allah cannot imagine the evil in this man. He says, you killed both of these children. He says, oh Amir, I wanted the reward from you. He says, a reward for such an evil action that there is nothing but death for you. That those children of Muslim, the same way Muslim ibn Aqil presented his sacrifice as the first for Imam Hussein, so then did the sons of Muslim, the grandsons of Ali ibn Abi Talib, present their sacrifice in the message of Islam as the final two killed for Imam Hussein. على لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره. With tears in our eyes we raise our hands in dua. ندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم يا الله 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 يا محمود بحق محمد يا أعلى بحق علي يا فاطر السماوات بحق فاطمة يا محسن بحق الحسن يا قديم الأحسان بحق الحسين. Oh Allah, accept this small ibadat from us. Ya Allah, give the thawab of this majlis to our marhumin, the marhumin of tonight's sponsor, and all those who are in need of dua. Ya Allah, forgive our sins and cover our flaws. Ya Allah, we have gathered here with hajat. By the right of the tears in our eyes, by the right of the wasila of Ali Muhammad, fulfill our hajat. Ya Allah, those amongst our families, our communities who are suffering through sickness and disease, Ya Allah, give shafa and aman to the mu'mineen wherever they are. Ya Allah, give our children and our families and ourselves the tawfiq to be attached to the Quran and Ahlul Bayt. Ya Allah, keep us in the guidance and the support of Islam. Ya Allah, hasten the reappearance of Sahib al-Zaman. Make us and our families from the supporters of Sahib al-Zaman, and entitle us to the ziyarat of Abu Abdullah in this world and the shafa of Abu Abdullah in the hereafter. Matim ya Hussein.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein,
ماتم حسین موئے جب دونوں دریا پر محمد اور ابراہیم موئے جب دونوں دریا پر محمد اور ابراہیم یہی کہتے تھے رو رو کر محمد اور ابراہیم موئے جب دونوں دریا پر صبا کہیوں یہ امو سے کہ ہم تیرے ہوئے فدیے صبا کہیوں یہ امو سے کہ ہم تیرے ہوئے فدیے قطعتے دونوں ہے ہم سر محمد اور ابراہیم موئے جب دونوں دریا پر محمد اور ابراہیم ہماری لو خبر جلدی کہ ہے ہم خود کو راہی ہماری لو خبر جلدی کہ ہے ہم خود کو راہی خرے ہم دونوں ہے مزتر محمد اور ابراہیم موئے جب دونوں دریا پر محمد اور ابراہیم تمہارے فضل سے شاہ ہمیں ہے دعا اتنا تمہارے فضل سے شاہ ہمیں ہے دعا اتنا ملے ہم باپ سے جا کر محمد اور ابراہیم موئے جب دونوں دریا پر محمد اور ابراہیم ہمارے باپ کو مارا کیا ہے ہم کو آوارا ہمارے باپ کو مارا کیا ہے ہم کو آوارا پھر ہم بت کے جو در بادر محمد اور ابراہیم موئے جب دونوں دریا پر محمد اور نہیں یہ مانتا یا شاہ ہماری منت سجا نہیں یہ مانتا یا شاہ ہماری منت न तेस जा मिलेंगे तुझ से दर महशर मुहम्मद और इब्राहीम मुए जब दोनों दरिया पर मुहम्मद यही कहते थे रो रो कर मुहम्मद और इब्राहीम मुए जब दोनों दरिया पर मुहम्मद और इब्राहीम मुए जब दोनों दरिया पर मुहम्मद अल-फातिहा। ज़ियारत
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا علي بن أبي طالب. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى أم المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله يا حسين بن علي الشهيد بكربلاء. السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين زين العابدين. السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي الباقر. السلام عليك يا جعفر بن محمد الصادق. السلام عليك يا موسى بن جعفر الكاظم. السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى الرضا. السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي الجواد. السلام عليك يا علي بن محمد الهادي. السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي العسكري. السلام عليك يا حجة الله يا ابن الحسن يا صاحب الزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها توينا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين.